Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. We are very pleased to announce the resumption of our weekly Explained series. For those of you who are new to this channel, let me introduce you to the Explained series. Every Friday at 8 p.m., we have been conducting the Explained series in which we take up an important topic and discuss it in detail. The idea is to help you prepare for this topic for both prelims and mains. So along with the Explained series, we have many more new initiatives going on. We have started the Knowledge series, which is going live every day at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. On the BYJU'S Exam Prep app, we have launched an exclusive target mains program to help the aspirants who are preparing for this year's mains. And also, from 20th June, that is from this Monday, we are going to resume Economy This Week, again on popular demand. Explained and Economy This Week had been stopped for a short while because of the prelims exam and because of the target prelims crash course. But starting today, we are going to resume our Explained series again, and don't miss these sessions every Friday at 8 p.m. All these initiatives, all these programs, they have been designed to help you prepare for prelims and mains. The idea is to help the students to have a one-stop solution for UPSC Civil Services examination. So if you're benefiting from these initiatives, do let us know, do support us through your likes, through your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So let's get started with the Explained session for today. And the topic for discussion is India's crackdown on VPNs, or virtual private networks. So in this session, we are going to understand why this particular topic is in news, why is it important, why is it relevant for our exams. We'll also talk about what are VPNs, what's the technology behind it, what are the advantages and disadvantages of VPN, and why has the government brought out these new set of rules to regulate the functioning of VPN service providers in India. So this is the agenda for today's session. So let's begin by understanding why this topic is in news. See, last month in May 2022, the government of India issued a stern advisory to all VPN service providers in the country. The government mandated the VPN service providers that they have to follow the new VPN rules that had been notified by CERT-In in the month of April. In the last week of April, CERT-In, or Computer Emergency Response Team India, this particular organization had notified a new set of VPN rules. And last month, the government issued a stern directive, an advisory to all the service providers that they have to follow and implement these guidelines. The deadline given to them was June 2022. By 26 June 2022, they have to implement all these guidelines that were mandated by CERT-In. So without the implementation of these guidelines, the service providers, they could face punitive action from the government. So as a result, these VPN service providers, they have criticized the government for these new regulatory guidelines, which they see as excessive interference of the government. And many popular private VPN service providers, they have pulled their servers and services from India. For example, companies like Surfshark, ExpressVPN, NordVPN, they've all shut down their operations in the last few days. And this has been dominating newspapers and media outlets in the last few days. So that is why the topic is so very important. This particular issue is related to the topic of cybersecurity. In this discussion, we'll understand all the issues in complete detail. It is part of your internal security syllabus under GS paper 3. And also note that the topic we're going to discuss, that is VPNs and the regulation of VPNs, it is also closely linked with science and technology and as well as polity. So in this session, we are going to cover all these dimensions so that you're completely prepared for this particular topic, whether there's a prelims question or a mains question. At the end, we'll also discuss a couple of practice questions so that you're completely geared up for this particular topic. So first, let's start by understanding what is a VPN. I've been telling you that the government brought out a new set of VPN rules. It has mandated the VPN service providers to follow them, or else it has asked them to shut their operations and leave India, to end their operations in the Indian market. So first, what you need to understand is what are VPNs. A VPN basically stands for Virtual Private Network. Virtual Private Network. See, to understand more about VPNs, you need a very simple and a very basic understanding of how the internet functions. The internet, as you know, is largely a free and open network, right? Large part of the internet, it's a virtual public network. Large part of the internet is a public network. On the internet, which is largely distributed, which is free and open, we have billions of devices. We have thousands and thousands of computers, phones, right? Basically, there are millions of electronic devices which serve as the clients on the internet. So it is through these computers, through these phones that we all access the internet on a day-to-day basis. We all visit our favorite websites, we place orders online, right? So a lot of transactions happen on the internet. A large part of the global economy today is driven on the internet. So we all access this internet, the public part of the internet, through our devices, through our computers, through our mobile phones, and through all the electronic devices and gadgets. So when you are accessing a particular website, basically your client device, your laptop or your mobile phone, it is pinging a request to the server. For example, let's say you're trying to access BYJU'S.com or BYJU'SExamPrep.com, or let's say you're trying to access Facebook.com, right? Through your client device, through your computer, through your mobile phones, you are sending a request to our servers requesting this particular web page to be served on your client devices. This is essentially the client-server model of the internet, which forms the very basic foundation of the internet. So the regular part of the internet that we all access, it is all on the public network. That is, through your computers and phones, you access the sites that you need. The servers are serving your requests, right? And this forms the virtual public network, the largely free and open part of the internet. In this virtual network, to identify every device, to ensure that every computer, every phone is uniquely identified, every device is associated with an address called the IP address. It's very similar to how every human has a name, right? That forms his identity. Our houses, they have an address. There is a PIN code, right? This is in the physical world. It is through these addresses that we identify the location of a particular individual or a particular house. The same happens in the virtual world, where every device, every client, every computer, every mobile phone that is connected to the internet can be identified through the IP address. Now, why should a device be identified? A device needs to be identified for several reasons. One, your internet service provider, ISPs, they should be able to give you access to the internet and connect you to the websites that you're looking for, right? Without having your unique address, unique identity, how will the ISP establish the connection with the user? So every device needs a unique address, that's the IP address, right? So the ISP is aware of your IP address. It gives out your location, your identity, the details of your device, that is the technical specifications of the device you're using, and it also helps the internet service provider to monitor your online activity. What kind of websites are you visiting? What are you ordering online, right? So all the activities happening from a device, it can be kept track of with the help of an IP address. This also helps the websites that you're visiting. On the internet, we all visit a lot of websites. We access a lot of applications, right? So even those websites, those companies, they need that data. They need to know who is the user accessing their server. They need to know what are they searching for, what are they ordering. This data eventually is crucial for the companies to deliver targeted content. It helps them to deliver targeted advertisements, right? So essentially the digital economy of today, it is based on the ability to identify the IP addresses. It helps in identifying every client, every computer, every device uniquely and separately. So the ISPs, the internet service providers and the websites and the companies, they can identify the user, the exact location from where the requests are coming, and as well as the details of the device, and more importantly, the activity of the device on the internet, right? All of this data is very crucial for the companies that are involved in this entire pipeline. This also helps the government and the law enforcement agencies and as well as your intelligence agencies to keep a check and to keep a track on the activities that are taking place on the internet. The government does maintain surveillance on the internet through its law enforcement and intelligence agencies. So with the ability to identify each device uniquely through the IP address, the government agencies can also keep track of any suspicious online activities. So this is what constitutes your public part of the internet, the public network that we all access on a day-to-day basis. But there could be certain individuals who may not be okay with sharing this intimate data, right? Because this is a question about your privacy. It's a question of your data privacy and your data security. Now, if a user has a desire to keep his online activity anonymous, right, then he needs to stay away from this public part of the internet that we were talking about. If you have to stay away from any kind of monitoring and surveillance, if you have to conceal your online activity, then you have to conceal your IP address. If you can conceal the IP address of your device and then access the websites you want through proxy servers, then you are basically operating through a private network. So on the internet, there are these virtual networks which are private in nature. So these VPN networks, right, they are maintained by VPN service providers. Just like you have internet service providers like Airtel, Jio, etc., there are VPN service providers as well, like ExpressVPN, NordVPN, etc. So these companies, they help you to mask your IP address. If you access a VPN server, if you switch on the VPN server and access the internet through a VPN, you can mask your location, you can mask your IP address itself. And whatever requests you send, whatever websites you try to access, right, they are routed through a different route, through a private network, not through the public network. But eventually the destination is the same. You will land on the same website. Let's say you're trying to access BYJU'S you will eventually reach the same web page, but the route you will take is different. Instead of taking the public route where you can be identified because of your IP address, here in VPN, in the virtual private network, you're taking a hidden route. You're taking a route where your IP address is masked, it is covered, and eventually you're reaching the same destination. Now, just to give you a crude analogy or a crude example for this. Now, let's say you're going from destination A to destination B in a particular car. Okay, you're taking a public road, you're driving your car, and your car has a number plate on it. The car is the equivalent of your computer device or your mobile phone, and the number plate, the registration of the car, is like your IP address, right? So when you drive the car on a public road, everybody on the road or whoever is monitoring the road, they know which car is going from destination A to destination B. With the help of the car's registration number, with the help of the number plate, they can trace back the owner of the car, their location, their activities, etc. Now, if you take a private road, let's say there is a hidden road between the same destinations, destination A and B, between the same destinations, there is a private hidden road instead of the public road. If you drive the same car by covering the number plate, by masking the number plate, you take this private road, this hidden road, and eventually you will reach the same destination. But the route you took is a hidden route, and you had masked your registration plate. So no one can keep track of who was going from destination A to destination B. This is just a crude analogy I've tried to give because it makes things much more simpler to understand how exactly a virtual private network functions on the internet. So large part of the internet is a public network, but there are these virtual private networks that can be created where a separate route can be created through which the user can get complete anonymity. They can conceal their IP address, the IP address of their device. The VPN service providers, they provide this service. If you subscribe to their service, they will help you to mask your IP address. If you access the internet through the VPN service, right, your IP address will be masked and a different IP address will be attached to your device. And also your requests, they will be bounced through multiple servers around the world, which we refer to as proxy servers. Your requests will be bounced through proxy servers located around the world so that the ISPs, the government, and the websites and the companies, they don't know where exactly the requests are coming from. For example, you might be sitting in Delhi or Bangalore and accessing a particular website. But if you're using a VPN, a virtual private network, your IP address will be masked and your request will be bounced through multiple servers around the world. The request might come in from a server in Netherlands or in Africa or in Australia. So for a company which is tracking your activities, for the ISPs which are tracking your location, or even for the government and the agencies which are monitoring your activity, right? They won't be able to figure out where the requests are coming from. They won't get to know your location and your IP address because it has been masked through the virtual private network. So this is the basic understanding you need to have about a VPN. It is essentially a private network, which is a virtual network on the internet. It creates a secure hidden channel. It acts like an intermediary between your device, that is the client, and the destination, and your data is then sent to an external VPN server, which then connects you to your destination. So that is the only change that is happening here, right? You take your regular internet, the public part of the internet, and you introduce a VPN server here. And if you access the internet through the VPN server, your IP address will be masked and your identity, your location, your activities, everything can be concealed. You essentially can become anonymous. So that is the advantage of a VPN network. Okay, so let me help you understand a little more about the advantages of this technology. See, VPN networks, they are used for multiple reasons. They are used mainly for online safety. Because if you're concealing your IP address and your online activities, you are basically improving your security. You are keeping yourself away from cyber criminals. Because cyber criminals, they will be on the lookout for your online activities. They'll be on the lookout for your IP address. If they get hold of this data, there is a possibility that they might hack into your system, or they might trick you into revealing sensitive details, financial details, and eventually you might become a victim of a cyber crime. So those who seek anonymity and privacy and online safety, right, they would prefer a virtual private network. Also, journalists, then activists, dissidents, essentially those who are against governments, especially against autocratic dictatorial governments, those who want to evade any government surveillance, they also tend to make use of VPN networks for any conversation and transactions. Let's say there is a journalist who's reporting against the government. The government agencies might be misused to target the journalist or the activist or the dissidents. So generally, in countries around the world, especially where there is excessive government surveillance, journalists, activists, and dissidents, they tend to use VPN networks to conceal their IP address, to conceal their identity and their online activities. So it guarantees privacy on the internet. It gives you that anonymity. It gives you that additional online security from cyber criminals and as well as from anyone who's trying to monitor your activities. So by this technology, you can evade any kind of invasive monitoring by the private companies, by the websites, by the tech companies. You can evade any excessive monitoring by the internet service providers or by the government or by the intelligence agencies. So that is the advantage of using a VPN network. Next, it also allows you to access any websites that are blocked. For example, the government might have blocked a particular website, right? Let's say a particular website which has adult content, or a website which has content which is against the government. The government might have blocked those websites, right? But through a VPN, by bouncing your request through servers located abroad, through proxy servers, and by masking your IP address, you will be able to access even blocked websites, right? So that is another added advantage of VPN networks. You can essentially spoof your location. You can mask your location, conceal it, as we discussed earlier, and it also gives you the ability to access geo-restricted content. For example, if you have been using any OTT platforms, like let's say Netflix or Amazon Prime, I'm sure you would have seen that there are certain movies and web series which are not accessible from India. It will be listed on their page, but you can't access it. You can't view them, even if you have a subscription. Why? Because that particular content is reserved only for certain geographies. Only the American audience or only audience in European countries can see certain content. Whereas those who are accessing it from India, they will be blocked. there will be a geo restriction placed on this content. So if you use a VPN network, if you mask your location, if you conceal your IP address and route your request through that particular country, then you can access geo-restricted content as well. So if you can overcome these restrictions that are placed on the internet, because generally internet is believed to be a free, democratic and an open network, right? So any such restrictions placed by the government, by the companies, they can be bypassed with the help of VPN networks. Is that clear? So you can change your IP, you can mask your location, and this helps in improving your data privacy. It helps in protecting your anonymity. It helps in evading any surveillance, any monitoring by government or by companies. VPNs are also used by private companies, by IT companies. I'm sure software professionals or anybody who's working in the tech industry, they would be familiar with it. Generally, companies keep their communications very secure. They keep their own private networks, virtual private networks. This is usually done to enable remote work. When employees are working from different locations, when they are dealing with sensitive company-related information, right? Obviously, those transactions cannot happen on the open internet, on the public network. So, for security reasons, private companies also employ VPN networks, virtual private networks, where they create a private network for the employees, right? So these are the different ways in which VPN can be an advantage. It can benefit certain journalists who are exposing corrupt governments. It can help activists and dissidents to expose governments which are autocratic, to expose governments which are stifling fundamental rights and which are violating a constitutional democracy, right? It can help people to protect their privacy and stay safe from cyber criminals. It can also help private companies, large companies, to secure their data, secure their transactions, and enable remote work in a safe manner. So these are the numerous advantages of VPN technology. But at the same time, the technology has a lot of disadvantages. VPN technology does come with its own set of disadvantages. First and foremost, if you are using a VPN network, it might slow down the speed of your internet. Why? Because when you're using a VPN network, your traffic is being routed around the world, right? Your requests are being bounced off multiple servers around the world to conceal your location and your IP address, and this might introduce a lag in the speed with which you can access the internet. So this might reduce the speed of your internet because it will take a slightly longer duration to access your destination website. So that is a short price, that is a small price that you should be willing to pay if you're using VPN networks, right? Because of the different route, the longer route that is usually taken, there is a slight increase in the turnaround time, and this generally reduces the speed and even the bandwidth sometimes with which you can access the internet. So that is said to be one of the drawbacks, one of the disadvantages. Next, if you're using a VPN network, you may not be able to access all the websites and services on the internet. Why? Because many companies, many websites, and even many governments, they don't provide services to VPN networks, right? They would have designed their servers in such a way that if requests are coming in from VPN networks, they will not serve those requests. They will block out those requests, and you may be denied access to certain websites and services if you're accessing through VPNs. Now, for example, a company like, let's say, Netflix. Why would Netflix allow a request from a VPN server when they know that people are using it to bypass geo-restricted content, right? If people are from other countries are trying to access a particular locked content, right? Why would those companies provide access to VPN users? So this happens across the industry. Even banks and financial institutions, they are very serious about cybersecurity. So generally, they don't provide services to requests coming from VPN servers, mainly due to security reasons. Companies, mainly due to profit, the profit motive, and they would also like to know their user, right? It's a legitimate private motive. Any company would like to know who the user is, what are their requests, what are they searching for, what are they looking for, right? So if someone is accessing it through a VPN, that website or that company might deny access or deny service to them. So this is something that you have to put up with if you are using a VPN network. There is a possibility that you may not be able to access all the services and all the websites. Next, it's not that you get full anonymity or complete anonymity just by using a VPN network. You might conceal your location, your identity and your activities from the ISP, from the government and from the websites. But how about the VPN service providers themselves, right? They are in a position to track your activity. It is possible for VPN service providers to keep a log of all your online activity. They will know your real IP address, correct? They might track your online activities. So anonymity is not full, it is not complete even in the VPN networks. But generally VPN service providers, the VPN companies, they operate on the basis of trust. Their selling model is based on the fact that they guarantee complete anonymity. They build the product in such a way, they build their technology in such a way that they don't keep any logs. They don't track any user activity. They don't even verify who the user is before providing them their services. This is generally how the VPN market works. But it is possible for the company to be tracking the user, thereby violating the principle of anonymity. So it is possible, it is a risk that you carry. Then most important, VPN networks can be very expensive, because if you access the free VPN networks which are freely available, they will have a lot of issues. You may not be able to access all websites. You may not have complete anonymity and security. Your speed and bandwidth might be compromised. So if you need better service, you have to pay, you have to take a subscription from the VPN service providers, which can be very, very expensive. It doesn't come cheap, you have to pay a price for this. So this could be another disadvantage of VPN service providers and VPN technologies. Is that clear? So popular VPN service providers like NordVPN, ExpressVPN, their subscription services are quite expensive. Not everyone will be able to afford and use them like we use our regular internet, right? So these are some of the listed disadvantages or the drawbacks of VPN. But however, the concerns surrounding VPN doesn't end over here. In fact, in India and around the world, there has been a long-standing controversy over the manner in which VPN networks operate. See, VPN networks are basically providing you anonymity. They are giving you complete anonymity on the internet, masking your location, masking your identity and your activities. Now, what if these networks, these private virtual networks are misused by, let's say, a terrorist, or let's say by a radical element to preach radicalism? What if it is misused by a cyber criminal to carry out cybercrime, right? Now, the crime could be untraceable. If a cyber criminal is able to conceal his location, mask his IP address and his identity, it will actually serve his purpose. What if terrorists are arranging their finance or chatting with other terrorists and planning and organizing attacks? What if there are anti-social or anti-national elements who are targeting a government, who are trying to bring down a government or to destabilize a government? What if they are using VPNs and virtual private networks to evade any government surveillance? So definitely VPN has the potential for misuse. The fact that it provides this extent of secrecy and anonymity is what makes VPNs vulnerable for misuse. I think this is true for any technology, right? Any technology, you mention it, be it cryptocurrencies, right? Or be it 5G networks. They all have tremendous potential. They can revolutionize the world. Of course, but they also come with their drawbacks, with their threats, with their concerns. The same goes for VPNs as well. VPNs do provide a lot of advantages, but if it is used with the wrong intention, like I said, if it is used by cyber criminals, terrorists, or any anti-state elements, it can create a major security challenge. It can become a major cyber security threat. And eventually, this becomes a national security threat, right? Because see, today, in today's world, the cyber domain, it has emerged as the fifth dimension of warfare. If you look at traditional warfare, wars were fought in three traditional dimensions: on land, in the air, and in the sea, right? This is where traditional wars were being fought. But as developments happened in outer space technology, space became the fourth dimension of warfare. Then came information and communication technology, the era of internet. With this, the cyberspace became the fifth dimension of warfare, right? So today in the cyber domain, there is cyber espionage, cyber crimes, cyber wars that are being fought. Today it is possible to bring down a country to its knees without even firing a single bullet, right? That is the capabilities, that is the potential that exists in the cyber domain. So naturally, governments, security agencies, intelligence agencies, they would be deeply concerned about such networks, VPN networks, which provide that secrecy and anonymity to the user. If there is no accountability, if there is no check on who is using it, what are they using it for, there is always a possibility that in the wrong hands, it could be misused. This is what the government is concerned about, right? See, earlier I mentioned about an organization known as CERT-In. I deliberately didn't tell you much about CERT-In back then because initially the focus was on understanding what is a VPN. But now, let's understand what are the government's concerns and what is CERT-In, right? CERT-In stands for Computer Emergency Response Team, India. This is the nodal agency in India to deal with cybersecurity of India. Is that clear? Please note down this point. It can be very important for prelims, even for your mains. CERT-In was set up in the year 2004. It is set up under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. It's under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. It was established in the year 2004 and it draws its legal backing from the IT Act, the Information Technology Act of 2000. Is that clear? So CERT-In is the designated nodal agency to deal with cybersecurity. It is responsible for defending India's cyberspace. It constantly monitors and watches out the Indian cyberspace, looks out for any threats, any attacks, and defends the Indian cyberspace against any of these cyber threats. It constantly deals with cyber crimes. It keeps track of any malware that are threatening the global internet and especially the Indian cyberspace. CERT-In will also collaborate with many other agencies, including intelligence agencies, armed forces, critical infrastructure institutions. It works with all the concerned stakeholders to guarantee the safety and the resilience of India's cyberspace. Like I said, the cyber domain has become a domain of warfare today, and you can't take the threats lightly over here. So CERT-In is the responsible nodal agency. It's a civilian agency that is responsible for defending India's cybersecurity. So CERT-In was of the opinion that VPNs are a threat. It's a security threat. Because of the anonymity and secrecy, there is every chance that it could be misused. So that is why CERT-In came out with a set of new rules. It notified the new VPN rules in April 2022. Through these rules, CERT-In was trying to regulate the functioning of VPN service providers in India. It was giving the service providers a 2-month deadline. That is, by June 2022, all the VPN service providers in India who have their servers physically located in India, they have to abide by these guidelines. By 26 June, they have to implement these guidelines or else they will be liable for punishment. The government could take action against these VPN service providers. So what kind of rules were brought in by CERT-In to improve the regulation of VPN service providers? CERT-In basically said that there is a need for a KYC-like process, know your customer process, to be introduced for VPN. This is already being followed by the banks, the financial institutions, the digital wallets, etc. Right? You can't have a bank account, you can't take a loan, or you can't have a digital wallet without carrying out the KYC verification. Right? KYC stands for know your customer. Basically, the bank or the financial institution which is providing you the financial service, they should know who the customer is. They should know what is his name, what is the age, where do they stay, what is their address, right? These are the basic details. And this is essential to ensure the stability of the entire system, to ensure that no one misuses the system and and threatens the very stability of the system. So a KYC-like verification system is being introduced by CERT-In. CERT-In has mandated all the VPN service providers to follow these norms, right? And this will apply not just for VPN service providers, it will even apply for data centers and cloud service providers, right? The data centers located in India, which are used for storing data, the cloud service providers, all these enterprises, these companies, they have to abide by certain guidelines, the new VPN rules. They have to implement a KYC-like process wherein they will make a registration of their user. They have to register their users, know their exact name with identification documents. They have to collect their email IDs, their phone numbers, their contact details, their address, and more importantly, the IP addresses of their devices. So basically the companies are being mandated to keep a log, to keep a record of their customers, their activities, and why are they accessing VPN networks, right? The government wants to know why certain individuals are accessing internet through VPNs. What's the reason? The government wants this to be ensured by the VPN service providers. So before a VPN service provider offer their service to an individual or to a company, they need to take certain documents. They need to take certain verification documents from the customer. They need to put it down in writing as to why this customer is accessing the internet through VPN. What's the reason, right? If it is a legitimate reason, if it is a genuine justified reason, then yes, the person or the entity, they could be provided VPN services. Like I said, VPN services, they do have a lot of advantages. There's nothing wrong per se in using VPN networks. But the company has been given a responsibility here to ensure that it logs everything. It records every detail, right? The names, the identification documents, email IDs, phone numbers, their IP addresses, everything has to be logged by the VPN service provider. This is already being done by your internet service provider. Now, let's say you go to Airtel or Jio. If you ask for a mobile connection or an internet connection, they don't simply provide it to you, right? You have to provide an identification document. You provide your Aadhaar card or any other ID. You provide your address, your phone number, your email ID, right? All these basic details, these KYC details are given by the customer. Only then the ISP is providing you the service. The ISP, they're keeping a log, they're keeping a record if needed, if the authorities someday ask for it, right? If the customer someday commits a crime by using the technology, the authorities will come to the company and ask for those details. And internet service providers, telecom service providers, they're already providing such data and such access to government agencies and security agencies. But VPNs were escaping this scrutiny, right? VPNs, like I said, they run on the model of trust. They guarantee absolute privacy to their customer. They weren't taking any KYC details. They wouldn't even ask for the names, the email addresses. They wouldn't keep a log of the IP address of the device. They wouldn't track any activity. They wouldn't log any online activity of the customer. They simply had no records. The product was built in such a way. So if that is the case, what if a terrorist or a cyber criminal, what if they misuse the platform and create a security challenge, right? That is what the government is genuinely and legitimately concerned about, right? So now KYC-like norms are being enforced on VPN service providers. They have to record the usage patterns, the purpose for which the customer is accessing internet through VPN, and other related information. All of this data has to be collected and recorded by the VPN service providers. Is that clear? The entities are also required to report any cybersecurity incidents that might happen through VPN networks to CERT-In. They have to voluntarily report any cybersecurity incidents that might happen. If there is a cybercrime, right, that happens on a VPN network, or if there is any radical or terror activity, or if there is money laundering taking place through VPNs, the companies have a responsibility to notify CERT-In that this incident is happening. They also have a responsibility to cooperate with the authorities to share any data and information which can help in investigation, which can help in investigating a crime, or which can help in preventing a terror attack. So they need to provide access to the data that they own, right? This is being mandated on the VPN service providers. If they don't implement them by June 26th, if they don't follow them, if they don't enforce these guidelines, the companies are liable for punishment. The government can take punitive action against these companies, and that is why several companies have shut their servers in India. In the last few days, you might have read in newspapers that many popular VPN service providers, they have pulled their servers from India. ExpressVPN, NordVPN, they've all shut down their services in India because of this tussle, this conflict that has emerged between the government and the VPN service providers. Now you might ask, why is the government issuing these rules, right? What is the government trying to achieve with these rules? Like I said, the government has justified these new VPN rules by stating that this will enhance the country's cybersecurity. The government has said this will make the internet safe for everyone, because it is essential for the law enforcement authorities to keep a check, to keep a monitoring or a surveillance on the basic activities that are taking place on the internet, to ensure that these activities don't threaten the sovereignty, integrity and stability of the country. So to ensure cybersecurity, to ensure overall safety of the internet, the government says that these rules are justified. It is legal and constitutional according to the government. See, please note that CERT-In had earlier reported that there are several gaps that exist in India's cybersecurity architecture. One of the gaps that was identified by CERT-In was the inability to access data from VPN networks. If cyber crimes or if cyber espionage or cyber wars are being carried out through VPN networks, CERT-In and other authorities, intelligence agencies like NTRO for example, right, or even IB and RAW, or even your police authorities at the state level, right, or even the Home Ministry, which also looks after cybersecurity. So all the concerned stakeholders, they couldn't have access to the data passing through virtual private networks because the locations, the IP addresses were masked, right? The routes through which the requests were being routed, they were encrypted. So the government did not have complete access to this data, to this sensitive data, which might help in investigation, which might help in cyber forensics. So that was a critical gap in cybersecurity that was flagged by CERT-In many years ago. So CERT-In was pushing the government to regulate VPN service providers and ensure that KYC norms are followed. CERT-In says that non-availability of data, of this data from VPN networks, it hampers any analysis related to a cyber incident. It hampers investigation into cybersecurity incidents. So that is why CERT-In was pushing for these new guidelines, and even the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Information Communication Technology had supported these guidelines. Back in 2021, that is last year, Parliamentary Standing Committee had submitted a report in which it had taken a stand against VPNs. The Parliamentary Standing Committee on IT, right, of the Rajya Sabha, it wanted the ministry, the Electronic and IT Ministry, to block VPNs which don't cooperate with the government. It had said that regulatory guidelines have to be brought in to regulate the functions of these VPNs, or else the misuse of VPN networks, the potential misuse, right, it might threaten the stability of the nation, the security of the state, sovereignty and integrity of the nation, and even public order. So on these security grounds, the government has moved to enforce these new guidelines and regulations on VPNs, but the companies have rebelled. Like I said, most are foreign companies. They're actually based out of countries which are very open, which are very relaxed with regard to their regulatory standards. Most private VPN companies are based out of countries like Netherlands or Panama, etc. So here they enjoy a lot of freedom, legal freedom to operate, where privacy and data security is highly protected through the laws. So they operate freely from these countries. But the big companies which had a big customer base in India, like ExpressVPN, NordVPN and the others, they did have physical service in India as well. But now they've said that they're not going to follow the government guidelines. They've said they cannot follow the government regulations because of the very motto of their company, the very motto of the product. They have promised complete anonymity to their customer. That is the very basis of their product. Like I said, it entirely works on the basis of this trust. So companies don't want to break the trust they have with their customers, right? If they abide by these guidelines in India, their customers in other countries will not trust the company anymore, right? Because VPN services were being provided on the basis that the company will never log any data. They will not hold any IP address data or activities of the user, and they'll not share it with the authorities. So if the company breaks that, right, their product itself will fall apart. So these companies have decided to pull out of the Indian market, and they have said that these guidelines and rules of the Indian government, it is an assault on privacy and threatens to introduce state surveillance against the citizens. This is what few companies have said. They have said that these rules are an attack on right to privacy. They have said it's an attack on right to free speech and expression, and it threatens the liberty of citizens, the freedom of citizens, as it might bring the citizens under a state of surveillance. Please note, right to privacy is a recognized fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution, right? In the landmark KS Puttaswamy case, the Supreme Court recognized right to privacy as a fundamental right. Then of course, right to expression, your right to free speech, right to free press, this is again a fundamental right under Article 19 of the Constitution, right? So any such government attempts to invade your privacy or to curb your right to speak up, your right to express yourself, it could be construed or it could be seen as a breach of your fundamental rights. So this is what the other side is arguing, right? So see, basically there are two sides to the argument over here. On one side, the government does have genuine concerns, as we discussed. There is a potential for VPN networks to be misused. It can be a security threat, and like I said, the government is justified in a way to bring these regulatory guidelines. On the other hand, the other side of the argument is that these rules being brought out by the government, they are very broad. They are not specific and they are overreaching. It doesn't specifically provide for dealing with cybersecurity incidents. It is providing for broad provisions where companies are simply being mandated to keep a check on their customers, keep a log on their activities, and share the data with the government when needed. So companies see this as a violation of right to privacy and right to expression, right? So that is their argument. Now, this is the right time to look at a similar controversy that had happened earlier with regard to one very controversial provision of the IT Act. The Information Technology Act, the IT Act, regulates the cyber domain, the cyberspace in India, and everything related to information communication technology. Under the IT Act, there was one very, very controversial provision, that is Section 66A of the IT Act. Under this provision, very strict punishment was provided for anyone who was sending offensive messages on the internet. If you are using an electronic device, a computer or a mobile phone, and if you are sending any offensive messages, through electronic communication, then you are liable to be strictly punished by the state as per the provisions of the IT Act. Now this seems like a fair provision. If someone is sending offensive messages, it has to be stopped. The person has to be held and they might have to be punished as well. What's wrong with that? The problem arises because it was a very broad provision. It was a loosely defined provision that gave a lot of subjectivity and discretion to the authorities. See, the very term offensive, it's very subjective. How do you define what is offensive? For example, what is offensive to you may not be offensive to me, right? The definition of offensive changes, it varies from person to person, context to context. If the law doesn't define it, if it doesn't provide the specific context, right, the authorities are likely to misuse that. The police at the grassroots, at the ground level, they will apply their discretion, they will apply their subjectivity, and they will target any message which might be deemed to be offensive, right? Today we live in times where everything is deemed to be offensive, right? So in those circumstances, a provision like Section 66A could be easily misused. A few years back, many people were arrested, many students, many young college-going kids were arrested just because they posted something on Facebook. They posted a joke which was ridiculing a politician, right? They shared a meme which was making fun of the Prime Minister or a politician or a Chief Minister. For such trivial issues, People, innocent people were held, they were jailed, and they were dragged through the judicial process, through the entire legal process, and it was all because of Section 66A of the IT Act. This provision of the IT Act was heavily criticized. Then finally, in the landmark Shreya Singhal case, this is a landmark case, please make a note of this. It is related to what we are talking about. In the landmark Shreya Singhal case, the Supreme Court struck down Section 66A as unconstitutional because the Supreme Court found this provision of IT Act to be violative of Article 19, that is, right to free speech and expression, right? So in today's context, Section 66A, it would have been considered as violative of Article 21 as well, as it would violate your right to privacy. Because many false cases were filed, many people were arrested, their right to free speech was being curbed as a result of the misuse of Section 66A of the IT Act. So now, on such a controversial topic, sometimes it might be difficult to take a stand as a civil service aspirant. So that is where you appreciate both sides of the argument. You look at the government's viewpoint. Like I said, the government does have a genuine concern. VPN networks can be misused. It can become a security threat potentially. So government is not entirely wrong in saying that the companies should help the government in monitoring the activities on VPN networks. However, what the companies, the activists, the users are saying is also right. The provisions might be too broad, right? It might be overarching. And if it is wrongly applied, if there is a lot of discretion at the grassroots, and if it is wrongly applied, it might lead to misuse and abuse of the law. It will simply violate right to privacy of our citizens, which is enshrined under Article 21. It will lead to violation of Article 19, that is right to free speech and expression, right? So the final decision on this matter is left to the courts if this new rules, if they are challenged in the court of law, right? But until then, the government is going to implement this. The government has made it very clear that even if these companies have to close down, the government has said, please go ahead. Either you abide by the rules or you quit the country, quit your operations. And that is what many companies have done. They have wound up their physical servers in India. They've shut down their operations. But however, from India, you can still access VPN servers because the internet is a virtual world, right? It's a distributed network. One country or one government can't simply shut down the internet or shut down or limit access to certain networks. Through VPNs located abroad, right? Indians can still access VPN networks. That would still be possible because that is how the technology works. But the companies operating in India, they have refused to abide by the government guidelines and they've all decided to end their operations in India. This is why the topic is very, very important. The companies have said that even technologically it's not possible for them to track their users, to log their IP addresses and their activities. Why? Because the product they have built was never meant to keep such data. They promise their users they are providing a virtual private network, which means they will not log the IP address, not log the activities of the user on the internet. So on this promise, they have built a product and they can't change this overnight. So it's a technological challenge as well for the companies. It's a genuine grievance that they have. Plus, they are concerned about privacy. What if the government misuses it? What if intelligence agencies and security agencies misuse the powers to carry out surveillance, state surveillance or mass surveillance against the citizens? So companies, the industry and the users, they do have certain genuine concerns about the new VPN rules. But like I said, the government has justified it and it is going ahead with its implementation. So on this note, I would like to bring my discussion to an end. But before we close for today, let me point out few potential areas for questions. There is a possibility that you can get prelims and mains questions from this topic we have discussed, right? So let me point out on which areas you need to focus. For prelims, focus specifically on the basics of VPN technology. Just the basics. Even if you're not a science student, even if you're not an engineer, just get to know the basics that we have discussed in today's class, right? Please go back, watch if you want again, make small notes or short notes and just understand what is VPN, what is a virtual private network. Just a simplistic basic understanding is sufficient. Next, focus on the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages that we discussed. That can be turned into a prelims question. Next, focus on the VPN rules, the new VPN rules that have been notified by the government, right? Through these rules, the government is looking to bring in KYC-like registration norms, where companies have to register the user, take their name, their identity, their contact details, their address, and start recording their IP details, their internet activity, and they have to store this data for 5 years. The companies, whatever data they collect, the VPN service providers, they will have to store this data for 5 years and keep it accessible to government agencies and government authorities. These are the new VPN rules. So be familiar with the provisions because there could be a prelims question here. Next, read about CERT-In, right? Just the basic facts about CERT-In. Like I said, it was set up in 2004. It draws legal inspiration from IT Act. It functions under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. And also don't forget, it is the nodal agency to deal with cybersecurity, to defend and protect India's cyberspace. So basic details about CERT-In could be a potential prelims question. Then coming to mains, there are several areas here. There's a lot of scope to ask questions on this topic. So I'm giving you 2 practice questions. Do go through them and please try to write an answer and post them in the comment section below. VPNs pose a cybersecurity threat despite the advantages they offer. In the light of this statement, critically evaluate the new VPN rules notified by CERT-In. Second question, what is a VPN or a virtual private network? Examine its applications and security concerns raised by it. So these are the 2 practice questions for you. So I expect you to write the answers for this and post them in the comment section below. So that is it for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you like the initiative. So every Friday from this week, every Friday at 8 p.m., we will go live with our popular Explained series. We'll bring to you a very big, interesting topic and explain it in complete detail so that you have all the information needed for both prelims and mains. So if you're liking the initiative, do let us know, do show some love to the faculties, to the wonderful teams that are working behind these initiatives, who are putting in all the effort. Just let them know by liking the video, share your comments as well once the stream ends, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.